Welcome to the Shadow Things Podcast.
We're going to jump right in. We got three great topics to talk about. Our guest, Curt Ehas. Now, just to introduce Curt a little bit, Curt has a really nice background in all things shadowy. So, Curt has a Bachelor's of Arts in Philosophy from the Ohio State University. Curt also studied history in college. He's been a historic reenactor and researcher for more than 30 years and also passes the time dabbling in genealogy. So Curt's been involved in paranormal topics since childhood. Curt's been actively participating in occult studies for more than 20 years. He joined a private paranormal research team called the Orion Group in the late 1990s and then later joined up with Parax Research Foundation in the early 2000s, where I later met and worked with Curt, conducting residential and commercial investigations into paranormal claims. So that's Curt. Curt, welcome aboard.
Hey, how you doing today?
We're doing great. It's really nice to have you on our second official episode. I think that as a first guest, you were the one that I really wanted to bring aboard early on and have you kind of become part of the family. And we've talked about the fact that we would like to have you come back repeatedly and kind of be that token guest that everybody gets comfortable with. So you were the first call as far as my guests go. So I appreciate you coming.
I appreciate that. I really do appreciate that. Your pilot episode was excellent, and you both kind of got into a topic during the end of the pilot episode, wondering why things like tri-field meters and things are used in paranormal investigating, looking for ghosts. Why people, think, oh, this is electricity, and while I think that, at least for me, it's almost a no-brainer, but I can give you kind of sort of a background in why people think that. I mean, it all kind of really started, the ancient Chinese with the qi and the life force.
Sure.
But when you look at physics and you start looking at what it is, what material is, what things, the couch or the chair you sit in, including yourself. So, we're all made up of atoms.
Yeah.
And in it, you go to your basic science class in elementary school, which I think they do a horrible job trying to explain that atoms are in everything, and therefore electricity is in everything, and everything relates to electromagnetism. They show you the electromagnetic spectrum in school, but they don't explain to you that everything is electromagnetic spectrum. Every single thing. So it's kind of like in Star Wars, the Force. The Force is in everything.
I like the Force, Curt. Just to throw that in there, I really enjoy the Force.
It's in everything, period, whether it's organic, inorganic, living, not living.
So could the Force be a real thing?
That's kind of what I'm trying to say, but that Force is electromagnetic energy.
I like it.
Insert lightsaber sound.
Right. So if you look at an atom, the basic idea of an atom is that you have a nucleus, which is protons and neutrons, and then surrounding that is a group of, or even a singular electron, and everything else in that atom is just space between it. between the electrons and the nucleus. Physicist, molecular physicist will tell you that 90% of an atom is just space. There's nothing there. But what makes that atom the atom it is, and that is the electron has this force field that it's traveling through, keeping it a distant away from the nucleus, a certain distance. And with that, so certain atoms might combine with other atoms. So like water, you have H2O, two hydrogen atoms combined with a oxygen atom, and that creates water. Well, those bonds are the electromagnetism between that hydrogen atom, those two hydrogen atoms, and that one oxygen atom. They link up, they say hello, they enjoy being together, so their force fields combine.
Right, kind of like the E-harmony of thermodynamics.
Exactly, and I'll go into that a little bit further here in a minute. So what can be, it's hard to, if you've got two atoms and they don't combine, there's something that keeps them from attaching, and that's like a force field. So when you sit in a chair, even though there's the space between the atoms in your butt and the atoms of the chair, you don't fall through the chair. Right. Why is that? Because the force field of the chair, which is an inorganic thing, and the force field of your body, the atoms in your body, they don't combine, nor do they fall through each other, even though they're all made up of 90% nothing.
That's kind of amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, that's pretty intriguing.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that force field is electromagnetic energy. It's also the same thing. Let's take Joe Rogan, for example. He's doing an MMA fight, and he punches a guy in the face. So that punch, the atoms in his hand don't combine with the atoms in the guy's face.
Right.
So then we have other electromagnetic reactions in that situation. The guy who he hits gets hit in the face, and now the skin molecules send electromagnetic signals to his brain saying, hey, you just got punched in the face.
Right, and it hurts. Like it stimulates the neurons.
It's not enjoyable.
Yeah.
Right. So all of that is electromagnetic energy, and it's all electricity.
Right.
Now, the biggest problem that you encounter with these ideas is it measurable?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. So, I mean, there's the whole... So today's paranormal researchers or ghost hunters, they base their entire premise of using instrumentation during ghost investigations or the research around the fact that energy cannot be created or destroyed. So,
correct.
I guess why is that? And why do we feel as paranormal researchers that it's going to affect our instrumentation? Or why is it measurable, like you said?
Well, there are scientists that, will tell you, it is electromagnetic energy. We don't have the technology at this point to measure something so minute. The electron swirling around the neutrons in a cell in your skin, it's so minute. Because of that energy, though, existing, and your brain, we have electrocardiograms that study your heart, electroencephalograms that study the electric stuff in your head. Those are strong enough and measurable enough where all of the surrounding energy of all these different chemical processes and electro processes going on in your body, they're not measurable. And at the same time, even if they were a little bit stronger and more measurable, the question is why?
Yeah. How would that?
Is there a medical reason to look at it? Is there a spiritual reason to look at it? And that's where the paranormal comes in. These people want to say, well, we're made up of energy, and energy can't be created or destroyed, only changed, which is the laws of thermodynamics. But does that really honestly say, well, that which is definable as Brent Fair
Right.
after death, that energy stays exactly combined the way it was when it was Brent, and is it measurable?
I like that.
I
Yeah.
mean, we are energy. We're all
Sure.
everything that exists. I mean, the microphone in front of you, the chairs you guys are sitting on, that energy exists and will always be.
Right.
Always be. We're all part of the Big Bang. When the Big Bang blew, we're all part of that. That energy, that initial energy that created everything around us, we're all part of that.
And one of the things that we use to measure energy, like sound, is that, everything, like you described, Curt, the microphone or that door over there, Vanessa's microphones or headset, has a resonance. Everything has a frequency. And where do you get a frequency from? I mean, you get it from energy. That's how the sound transfers between this mic and
It's all electromagnetic
It's
energy.
all,
It's part
yeah.
of the electromagnetic spectrum.
So you see a lot of the things that we use every day are affected or are part of that electromagnetic spectrum, but you don't really appreciate it because there's so much of it going on. Is that right, Curt?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't see the electromagnetic energy
Sure.
holding the atoms that make your body. You don't see that holding it together,
Right.
but it is.
Yeah. So
I mean, every single cell. I mean, how many? I don't know. Immeasurable number of atoms make up your body.
Right. Immeasurable. Yeah, I think you hit the right word
Yeah.
there. Let me ask you a question, Curt. So you talked about the possibility or theory that maybe the paranormal end of the measurable energy is so minute that we just can't, we it's barely detectable, or maybe it is detectable. But let me ask you this. So with that being said, maybe it affects our instrumentation, maybe it doesn't. So maybe it is measurable to some degree, depending on what you're using or your beliefs and how you're using it or how you're trained to use some of the instrumentation. But how does energy, in terms of spirit energy, how does it come into play when a paranormal researcher's theory might be that a spirit uses energy to manipulate physical objects like open doors or slide something across the table?
Well, I mean, they would probably be using the electromagnetic force, the energy that they're made up of, to move, using those force fields, those atom force fields, like I was describing earlier,
Yeah.
to push things. But I mean, it still doesn't answer the question.
Maybe not consciously, though. I mean, I'm sure that dead Uncle Charlie's not up in heaven or that other plane of existence going, let me manipulate this atom by doing this. Maybe they're just acting as they were in human form and simply moving it with their physical will, I guess. But in that other plane of existence, it's really just the atom manipulation.
Right. Well, I mean, that energy, I mean, if it still is definable as Uncle Harry, there's nothing that says that it wouldn't have that ability to move objects. I mean, the question is,
Yeah.
the energy that we're made up of surviving intact as an identifiable, yeah, that's Uncle Harry energy after death.
I see.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
I
So,
mean, our identity, I mean, it's a huge subject in philosophy. What is
Yeah.
your identity? I mean, are we just, this combination of electromagnetic energy and chemical reactions? Is there more to it? And there's a lot in different cognitive science where UCLA has a cognitive sciences department that actually has done a lot of different research on identity and cognition and what it is other than just chemical reactions.
right, that's fascinating. It really is. So like I'm of the firm belief that we're not just a bag of bones and blood
Flesh
with
and skin.
a little bit of primordial happenings going on inside of us by the law of nature. I think that, and I hope that when we leave this plane of existence, this earth, our bodies, that it's really impossible for us to just cease to exist.
Yeah.
I just think that that's the way it's going to happen. I think that, a lot of people subscribe to different faiths and, religions on the basis that, they are seeking, salvation or that next step, which is all, the hope that, that energy, it really just cycles back around to the energy part, that it can't be created
Absolutely.
or destroyed. Can it dissipate? Can it change into other forms? Yes, it can. The law of thermodynamics allows for that. But,
absolutely.
everything just comes back around to frequencies and energies. It's everything. It's the universe.
Yep.
It really is.
Well, and here's another example, and this might go toward the whole paranormal, psychic. I feel, Uncle Harry's in the room.
Sure.
And that is, you're married, and you spend, 8 hours a night in a bed next to another person.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say that person goes on a trip, goes off with friends for a weekend, and you're still at home in that bed. You can actually, at least I can, tell that person's not there throughout the whole night of sleep.
Oh, yeah.
They sleep
100%.
differently.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's because your electric field and their electric field have gotten used to and accustomed to each other.
Yeah.
So this is why, psychics, they my problem with psychics is they make broad claims.
With long fingernails sometimes.
It's a long way from going, hey, I can sense somebody when they're laying next to me all night,
Sure.
to going to, yes, right now there's this little girl sitting in the corner of the
Yeah.
room, and
She's
and she's
angry,
upset, she's
right.
mad. Where, it becomes difficult for me to necessarily jump and go, oh yeah, this particular psychic is so awesome and so correct,
Right.
because how does, and I understand getting in touch with, people,
Sure.
this whole COVID mess has been really awful as far as interpersonal connection with people. People don't shake hands anymore. People don't hug anymore.
Yeah.
Depressing.
And I think it's actually horrible for mankind, because we are pack creatures, and we have to have that connection with others of our kind. It's a necessity for our health.
Yeah. Very much so.
Everybody's electric fields have an effect on other people. Somebody walks into a room and they're in a poor mood. People can feel it.
Yeah,
I mean, how many
yeah.
times have you said,
That vibe.
"Oh wow, this room, should I leave and come back later?"
Yeah.
Yeah. And what you said earlier might with the whole laying next to somebody for an extended period of time and they're not there, that might lend some credence to when you're alone in a room, or you believe you're alone in a room, or this could apply towards a haunted location when you're sitting there by yourself and just kind of feeling the atmosphere, and you don't actually see anybody come to the room, but maybe an energy actually enters the room, and you feel that because your vibrations, your energies change because of that interaction that you can't necessarily see.
You can almost physically feel that. Like when you're in a room, the air pressure
absolutely.
changes. Like there's almost like a ringing.
Right.
I don't know how to describe that
Yeah.
any better, but there's something to that for sure.
Absolutely, but we still come back to the whole, how is it scientifically measurable?
Yes. That's what really piques my interest. Yeah.
At this point, our technology isn't at a point that it is truly 100% scientifically measurable. And you can run around with tri-field meters or cell sensors or whatever, and those are looking for electromagnetics on a much grander scale.
Absolutely.
Than
Yeah.
what we're talking about with what our human body does.
Which may support the fact that not everyone experiences, paranormal phenomenon, or have they ever seen a ghost? A lot of people haven't. A lot of people have, but there's a population of people that have not been experiencers. And the fact that that energy is so minute at times, or as a majority, would really support why not everybody experiences that kind of phenomenon.
Well, and I mean, how many people do you know that go through their life and they just don't connect with other people?
Yeah, that's very true.
There are a lot of people out there that they can't make any kind of connection, whether it's on a subatomic electromagnetic level or any kind of level. I mean, there's lots of people who they don't have the emotions or whatever to deal with people. And so those people are, they'll walk into a room. There could be, chairs going across the floor, standing on end, stacking themselves, and they wouldn't be able to tell what was going on.
That's crazy. That might go into kind of my next question. So do you think spirit energy theory is applicable to this visual spectrum as well, like IR and full spectrum, or even ultraviolet?
Well, I would think that, when you're talking about this energy, yes. I mean, there has to be a way to see it. It's just, like I said, at this current point, we either don't have the technology necessary to see it, or everything's driven in our world by economics. So if you stop and think, is it really going to be profitable for me to spend the decades of science and man hours to develop something that looks at this? Because honestly, what's the purpose except turning around and selling it to paranormal researchers?
Right, which is kind of why NASA doesn't put a lot of their budget into SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. There's far greater economic need to get to Mars or explore, our own close atmosphere orbit. So that kind of does make sense about the economic part of that.
Yeah, well, I have issues when it comes to NASA and JPL, and that a lot of that has to go back to the fact that JPL in particular was founded by occultists. So,
really, well, that is an entire different show that I would like to possibly look into. That's fascinating that you said that. Okay.
Yeah, one of the early scientists that helped found JPL was actually a member of the Church of Philema, started by Aleister Crowley. So.
Oh, you're kidding me! Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty deep.
Yeah. Well, actually, he ran the temple, the Eastern Temple for Crowley in California, for 10 or 15 years, and actually, one of his members was L. Ron Hubbard, and when L. Ron Hubbard left the Church of Thelema, he wrote Dianetics, which was pretty much based on Thelema, and founded Scientology.
Yeah. Go Tom Cruise.
That all started in California from the founders of JPL.
Right.
So,
speaking of energies and Scientology, and this is way off topic, but I used to live in Clearwater, Florida, and I would drive by the headquarters of Scientology down there in Clearwater, and you just got that fucking vibe.
100%.
Yeah, like you've been by there.
100%.
Maybe that's energy. I'm going way off into the fringes, but
hey,
man, it is a vibe when you just see those people down there and they're doing their thing. But yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that, Curt, but yeah, very fascinating.
Well, this is why I said earlier that if I start to get off track, ask me a question to bring me back on, because I can really divert from topic, because
I love it.
Things firing in my head.
Yeah, you're a barrel full of information, like the JPL thing and stuff. That's a whole.
It's awesome.
That's a whole future
show. Know about all that, being that you're a space lover and a UFO lover.
Nope, I need to, and I am, but I need to really dig into things a little bit deeper, I suppose. So I did not know that, but that is a very good topic for later. So
But JPL had all kinds of early on free love stuff going on in California.
Wow. Okay. Well, swinging the topic back real quick. So one of my favorite instruments it just happens to be the tri-field meter. So, I mean, you have all these gadgets that you can buy on Amazon or eBay or what have you, or some of the mom and pop paranormal shops online that are just EMF meters that, they blink and they light up and they beep and they they really make the end user, the researcher, feel like they're in a lab coat. Like, holy shit, I am detecting a ghost. So my problem is that, like you said, Curt, they're detecting, the wiring in the old building, and people are going to listen to this and say, well, I've been in buildings that intended. Yeah, exactly. It's a tool for exactly. That technology is intended for microwave appliance technicians and what have you. Now, the tri-field meter, why it was my favorite, is because you can opt to switch that over to a geomagnetic setting. So you're really measuring the geomagnetic field to see if there's a disturbance or manipulation there. So going back to the whole energy thing, do you think that spirit energies could manipulate or kind of go against the grain of geomagnetic Earth resonance?
I'm sure that it could probably interfere with it. But you got to stop. All right, so let's say it is Uncle Harry.
Right.
His identity is Uncle Harry. He hasn't changed, except he's no longer in body form. It's just Uncle Harry's energy. How is the tri-field meter going to read Uncle Harry is over here as an energy entity, but not pick you up?
Right. So really, we should be disturbing these instruments just as much as Uncle Harry. I mean, Correct. If you think about it, even more so because we're in our physical earthly form.
And you have all these chemical reactions, which are also electromagnetic going on at the same time.
Right.
So our energy output is going to be higher. So the tri-field should just be going like nuts.
Nuts.
Like us.
Right. Right.
Versus, you walk around and you're holding it and you're like, nothing's going on.
Yeah.
The lights are going off.
And I guess that's why a lot of people...
Studio 35, and all of a sudden, boom, it's going like crazy.
Oh, I love Studio 35. And for those that don't know, Studio 35 is an old and still operating movie theater. It's a single cinema house that it's located in Clintonville, Ohio. And Curt and I had the pleasure of checking that out back in the day. And just a very, very cool place. And there was actually, I can't get too much into it because there's probably somebody living in it, but there was an apartment associated with that location that had a rather interesting find upstairs in one of the closets. Do you remember what I'm talking about, Curt?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
I don't know if I should mention it.
You can, yeah, you can. So
the Memento Mori pictures.
Yes, of children.
Hundreds and hundreds of Memento Mori.
Yes. And I mean hundreds, and not to go too far into that, but Studio 35, if you're in the central Ohio area, go check out a movie there because you may get more than butter with your popcorn. That was corny, but I do mean it. So,
yes, it was.
Going back to energy.
It's actually one of my favorite hunts we did.
Yeah, very, very memorable for me too. So, and we've been to a lot of places, castles, and lots of residences, and you name it. But that was certainly one of my favorites. But so let me ask you this, Curt. I have personally, during a ghost hunt or a paranormal investigation, I'm not sure what to call it nowadays, but I've personally seen an object move on its own, and I don't quite know how to explain that. Can you relate that to, again, energy?
Well, I mean, something acted on the atoms in the object to make it move. I mean, so things don't move without energy.
Telekinetic energy, possibly. Maybe we thought it to move.
Well, I mean that's always a possibility also, and I like to take a moment and define the difference between the things I'm talking about, which are scientifically provable, versus what we believe.
Sure.
For me, it's an important distinction. I've seen apparitions myself, and I certainly wouldn't be somebody who was interested in paranormal if I didn't have some sort of beliefs that kind of aligned with it. The difference is when you're discussing these things is being able to say, okay, this is what I believe. I have faith that this thing exists, versus I can scientifically prove this. You know, I identify these days as a Christian, and I definitely, no matter what, I've always believed that, you know, there was a creator out there that created us. And that's a belief. I can't prove it.
Sure.
I wish I could. You know how rich I'd be if I could prove any of this?
Yeah.
I mean, certainly, you know, that we could end all kinds of, you know, human hatred if we could prove one thing was true.
Yeah. One common bond.
Yeah. It's one of the biggest things is, you know, these religions divide over these small little details, and they war over it, and they murder each other over it, where if you break things down, especially with the major religions, they all believe the exact same thing.
Yeah, precisely.
And science really does too, because you know, whether you're talking about spirits and spirituality, you're essentially talking about energy. And even your biggest atheist physicist, when they talk about energy, it's a religion to them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an excellent way to put it. So, Curt, Ocean Avenue in Long Island, New York. There's a house that everybody knows about.
Which address?
To be honest, I don't. It's like 1300. I don't know. It's not 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, because we all know what goes on there.
There's something different going on there.
There's something different going on there, whichever side of the aisle you're on. But
well, I believe the address was originally 112 Ocean Avenue.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
But I believe in subsequent decades, the address was requested to be changed because of all of the sightseers.
Wow. That's bizarre, because the fucking house stays the same.
Right. It's unmistakable.
They had the address changed. I think it was something ridiculous too. They took it down to like 110, which, I mean,
I would never be able to find it.
It's still going to be the same spot.
Yeah, I would never find it if they changed it by 2 addresses. Holy shit.
Right.
But
yeah, 2 numbers.
Anyhow, tell us a little bit about
literally next door to where it was.
Right.
It's kind of nonsense.
And might as well just throw a sheet over it at that point. You poke little eye holes out.
Look it up on Wikipedia, and it talks about the address change.
Oh wow, I'll have to check that out. But so what's new with what do you know about Amityville? Talk to us.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but Ron DeFeo Jr., the original killer, killed his family.
Right.
He died recently.
Yes,
jail,
that's right.
After, I mean, how many decades of the people of New York supporting him, and his, I don't know, something like 45 attempts to appeal his case.
Right.
I mean, it was like every year or two he was filing an appeal through his attorneys, which I found out in some of my research that his original defense attorney was also, I believe, the attorneys for the Lutz family.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds a little, peculiar.
Yeah. It struck me as odd too, because then, later on that attorney came out and said it was all hoax, so they could get out of owning the house and all that. One of the more interesting things is in the last less than a decade, Donald, I believe his name was, Lutz, one of the children, I believe it was the older boy, did a documentary. I think it's called My Amityville Horror. It was on Netflix for a while. I watched it. And the interesting thing is he basically comes out and says it was all George, that George was causing all of the activity and the things going on there, that George had spent so much time studying the occult.
Oh.
And was really into the occult, and that's what brought all of that to that house.
I did not know that. So basically, he unknowingly manifested that.
Go ahead.
He unknowingly manifested the haunting or the situation.
Well, I think that Donald said that it was intentional, but he also talked about instances where, even though he was like 10 or 12 years old, George would get angry with the kids and want them to go to their room or whatever. And he describes George actually throwing him up a flight of stairs.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So there was a lot more going on there than ghosts.
Yeah.
And you would think, I mean, I have respect for certain people in the paranormal community, but if you bring a psychic into a home to do an investigation and they pick up on a pig with glowing eyes at a window versus an abusive stepfather situation, you would think, that would be the first thing they'd clue in on, is there's something wrong in this family.
Yeah, unless you have motive to pick up on Jody, the glowing eye pig, first.
Right.
But
yeah, exactly. It's one of those cases where several different groups were brought in, from the initial reports of the Lutzes, all the way through the end of their ownership, and for a few years until the house sold again afterward. There were, I think, 3 or 4 big investigations of the property.
Mm-hmm.
And none of them picked up on the fact that, George was an abusive stepfather.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to motive, because we all know when ghost hunters go into a presumed paranormal location, they're there to actually hunt for the ghost. They want to capture evidence on film or video or EVPs or what have you. They're in it for, I'm sorry, I'm not a bullshitter. They're in it for the thrill. So there's motive. That's the motive that I'm talking about. If you're not looking deeper into the causal reasons of, why things happen, and that is a residential case, true and true. If you're not looking deeper into those causal reasons, there's a reason for it, and that's because people aren't interested in the deep stuff.
Well, I think that's where we varied when we were doing Parax.
Yeah,
was we really looked at trying to get some sort of resolution.
Sure.
Rather than go, yep, there, look at this cool picture we got. Look at these EVPs we picked up. And then leaving those people, still going, well, what are we going to do about this? Sure.
Absolutely. I remember quite a few cases where we were able to resolve, at least the burning question, is there a ghost in my home, for several people during our time together at Parax. So that's really a good thing. And I don't think that Amityville as a property or as a story was afforded that very much.
I don't think it was. I don't think it was investigated with the proper intent.
Yeah. Now, I can't remember when Ed and Lorraine Warren got involved with the Amityville property or the Amityville case. Was that their first big one, or was the whole Conjuring house or the Annabelle even, was that first?
I'm trying to remember which came first. It seems to me like, wasn't Annabelle in the early 1980s?
It was certainly early on, for sure. And I'm not a historian of all things the Warrens. I did have Lorraine on our previous show, Taps Family Radio, at one point, where we spoke with her about some of the cases. But I don't recall what kind of their hallmark flagship, first case was that kind of put them on the map.
Amityville was definitely one of their first big cases. and might have been the one that thrust them out into the spotlight more.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that they already had the museum when they investigated Annabelle, if I remember right, because one of the first things that Ed did was take Annabelle to the museum and encase her in the blessed case that she sits and resides in today.
Sure, absolutely.
The thing that disturbs me about like Hollywood and the movie changes and things is that Annabelle was a Raggedy Ann doll.
Yeah, genuinely.
Not some porcelain, pretty doll like they show in the Conjuring series.
Right.
It's Hollywood.
Yeah, for sure. I remember speaking to John Zaffis at one point, so the Warrens' nephew. Yeah, for sure. He definitely said that there was something to that doll, and that the items that are in the museum there. So that kind of harkens back to the whole energy topic. So you imagine the energy in that little room down there. So
well, and certainly, I mean, if we could figure it out, if we could figure out how to truly narrow down the electrical energy around to be able to pinpoint, hey, it's certain nanojoules of electricity that make up, the reactions in a human life form. And there's no human life form sitting there, but I'm getting the same reading.
Right. There's your signature.
As a human life form.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a positive signature. That would be game changing for not only paranormal but science. I mean, that would be
absolutely
life. That would be.
But there's no money in it.
Yeah, there's no money in it. So how do we make money off of this, Curt?
That's a good question.
Wow.
I always wanted to win James Randi Foundation's money.
$1 million. I think we had James Randi on our show as well back in the day for Taps Family Radio, and he was a great guest. As everyone knows, Mr. Randi is very skeptical. Rightly so. He's got a lot of valid points, but Vanessa, I don't know if you know, but he's a magician basically. What was it? James the Amazing Randi or
Amazing Randi.
Yeah. So he put up $1 million of his own money to anyone that can prove in a laboratory setting or reproduce in a laboratory setting that, what was it, Curt? Ghost or real or paranormal phenomenon exist or
any paranormal phenomenon
right.
at all.
$1 million, cold hard cash. Why aren't people doing that now? They're just putting it on YouTube and going, oh,
word.
Holy shit.
No, I agree.
I'm ready for that $1 million, but yeah, there's really no money in it beyond, some of those foundations or, trust. But yeah, that's a shame. And going back to Amityville, I just don't think it was afforded, like we said, the proper due diligence. And now it's in the history books, and it's a normal home, and some family lives in it that, from what I understand, does not experience any sort of paranormal phenomenon whatsoever. Is that kind of where you're at, Curt?
From my understanding, there's been at least 6 families that have lived there since, and none of them have experienced anything.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. I actually put a topic up on Twitter. It's either scheduled for today, but it was a post that kind of touched on the Conjuring house. So, and the question was, is the Conjuring house haunted? And if so, how is it haunted? So, and that kind of applies to the Amityville house. Was it haunted, and in what sort of way was it haunted? There's varying levels or degrees of haunting phenomenon that people experience. But like the Conjuring house, people go in there. Some people go in there and they say they see, chairs flying around or whatever. And some people go in, and we've seen a couple YouTube documentaries, and there's some shows on television where people go in and they have the levels of things happening, but not to the degree of what the Perrons experienced during the actual haunt. What made the case the case, the mother being thrown back, across the room and stuff like that. I think that, like the Conjuring house or the Amityville house, if it were to be haunted, in my humble opinion, I don't think it's on a level of moving shit around. I don't think it's on the quote-unquote demonic spectrum. I think it's probably have some, some residual effects or quality to it, and that's about it. So, it really just kind of depends on the experiencer and the location. And
well, and whether or not your research group has people in it that are easily spooked.
Oh my goodness, don't get me going on that, Curt.
Well, I distinctly remember you getting attacked from behind by somebody jumping down a stairwell, so because he was scared.
That did happen in a castle.
Oh boy.
Yes. Yeah, that did happen, and that's kind of what, and we touched on it a little bit in the pilot. It kind of irks me is that a lot of paranormal investigators are driven by their subjective experiences and their feelings, their emotions, and yet their whole basis is around this science through these instruments. I mean, like pick and choose. Like, which one is it? Are you the fucking instrument, or are you letting the instruments be the instruments? Like, rolling around on the ground saying that you're possessed doesn't necessarily make me believe that the place is haunted, or there's Beelzebub is hanging out in the room with you.
Not in the slightest.
So I don't know. But that's a whole topic there. Paranormal television. It's kind of crazy, but it's all in the experiencer as well. So
absolutely.
Anything else with Amazon?
Amazon.
With Amityville. Jeff Bezos is in
that a commercial plug?
Yeah, that was a commercial plug. $59.99 Sunday.
The interesting thing is James Randi just recently died too.
Yeah, I forgot all about that, but yeah, you are correct. That's surely a loss.
Yeah, the Amityville house, I believe the last time it sold for around $800,000.
Goodness.
I mean, property values in New York are crazy.
Yeah,
back
sure.
in the 70s when the Lutzes bought it, it was $84,000, which was still like double what a normal house would have sold for on the day.
Right.
So,
right.
You're talking, Long Island. So,
and still a beautiful home by all rights today.
Colonial.
Yeah.
It's definitely and a nice area of the state.
Yeah.
Especially when you're talking so close to New York City.
Yeah.
To have something, an area that's so pretty.
Speaking of shadowy things like New York City, Curt, do you know anything about the so-called Hat Man phenomenon?
Not really.
Well,
I've of course over the years I've listened to Coast to Coast AM, and so I've heard about shadow people, and I assume that this is somewhere along the same lines.
Right. Yeah, and I've been researching, involved in paranormal for a long time, and I just recently heard the term, the Hat Man. And
Hat Man was a new term for me too.
Yeah, I first thing that popped in my head was slender-man, or the Men in Black. But Vanessa has been digging into the Hat Man phenomenon a little bit, and she's going to kind of share what she knows and tell us what's going on with this Hat Man.
So I've lightly been digging in, but I haven't known it by the Hat Man for any more than the past week. So that's new to me. That
Awesome.
Whole thing is new to me. And it seems that the Hat Man and shadow people go hand in hand. Now, depending on who you ask, the Hat Man is a cryptid or a creature. The Hat Man is a spirit or a demon or an entity. Like I said, depending on who you ask. Now, there's only I don't want to say there's few stories, because there are hundreds. And there's a guy, goes by the name Timothy M. Brown Jr. Back in the 1990s. Now, the oldest case that I was actually able to find, I'm sure there's an older one, was actually in 78.
1978.
In 78, there was a 6-year-old girl who if you're familiar at all with sleep paralysis.
Absolutely.
As I'm sure most of humanity is, but if you are not, it is a state of paralysis.
Sure.
A state of paralysis. You can't in your sleep.
Yeah.
When you, I guess I want to say, your body is not done dreaming. I guess I don't know how to.
Your body's asleep, but your mind is fully awake.
Your mind is fully awake. You cannot move anything but your eyes, and your body is still in that dream state. I guess from my light research, it says that your body paralyzes itself while you're dreaming to keep you safe.
It's a protective feature. Yeah.
So that was really interesting. I didn't know that because I've had far too many encounters.
Imagine you and I have all these supervillain dreams where I'm kicking the shit out of some superhero, or maybe I'm the villain and not the hero. I don't know. But anyway, I'm kicking the shit out of somebody. Right? Imagine if that's going on, in real life while I'm dreaming. So I'm kicking the dog, or flailing around in the bed like some of these paranormal shows. That would be awful. So yeah, that definitely is a biological safety mechanism so that we don't hurt ourselves during dreams. But so with sleep paralysis or others like the wife or whatever, but with sleep paralysis comes with a couple of other characteristics of experiences. And I've been in a sleep paralysis experiencer in my teens, greatly, a lot. And some of the things that happened to me were, ringing of the ears, numbness, a buzzing sound, and that definite feeling that just off the side or that just out of view of my vision, while I'm lying there awake staring at the wall or the ceiling, something, I want to say sinister, lurks. And I know it's there, but I can't move to see it. So are we talking about the Hat Man?
So from what I gather, now I'm not a sleep expert by any means. So
I am. I sleep the hell out of it. So.
But I've had my run-ins with sleep paralysis episodes where I too have felt, I have a reoccurring where my bedroom door is open and the hallway is pitch black and there's one light on in my bedroom and I float off of my bed and I'm starting to float towards the black abyss that is the hallway.
Absolutely.
But I can't see what it is. I don't know that it's there, but again, I do. There's something in the hallway. Yeah. And it's not great.
Right.
That's just, I don't know. It's a recurring thing for me. And by the time I'm a foot away from that doorway, I wake up.
Yeah. So that, and some people, if you research a little bit about astral projection, people have the sleep paralysis phenomenon happen and oftentimes leave their body. So they're attached, and this is just the theory, but they're attached to their physical form by what's known as the third eye string or the third eye cable or rope.
I've heard of this.
Where it attaches to your spirit body as you travel. And then when it's time for you to come back to your physical form, you snap back. And I've heard the term snap back like a rubber band used a lot. But what really excites me is that presence. Like what is it? Is it now a lot of people, and I wrote an article in TAPS Paramag when it first came. I think it was the first edition, but read an article on sleep paralysis and that whole phenomenon of experiencing the presence and all that. A lot of people subscribe to the theory that that's an alien visitation, so little gray men outside your door. But why not the Hat Man? It could be. What is it? Is it the Hat Man, the Old Hag? Is it an alien? What are your thoughts?
I've read it all at this point. If you're skeptical, which there's a large portion of us that have all these questions, that it's just simply a hallucination when you're in that state. And although that's possible, people from all walks of life are having this same experience without all of these people having a connection with one another.
Right.
How, if it's just a nightmare or a dream or a hallucination, why is everyone around the world having the same nightmare or dream or hallucination?
Yeah, why is it the same? Now,
why is it this guy in a hat? And
right.
I know we're getting kind of sidetracked. So the guy in the hat, if you don't know anything about it, it's when people are in this state, and people have had this experience with the Hat Man outside of their sleep in broad daylight. You know, there's stories on the internet where there's a shadow man, not cloaked, I want to say like trench coat.
Right.
And he's got a wide brim hat.
Right.
Sometimes like one of those old Abraham Lincoln type
Sure, like
hats.
a top hat or a fedora.
You hear it described in all different types of fashion, but basically it's always described the same way, and sometimes he's accompanied by other shadow figures.
Really?
I
So
have
he's
read,
like maybe just a boss or something like.
And that's exactly how people describe him. It felt like he was the boss, and there were two other people with him, and you can never make out features. You can never. A lot of people claim to say that he has glowing red eyes, which was interesting to me. It's kind of crazy, but I'm not going to sit here and say that.
It's kind of Mothman-y sounding.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say that these things are happening to these people, because you know what I mean?
I firmly believe they're happening because I've experienced it. I haven't seen anything, but I've physically felt things during these sleep paralysis episodes, these astral projection episodes that I've had as a teenager. But I've never actually seen what it is that I fear. But it is an overpowering urge to just get out of that situation.
100%.
Yeah. So I guess the hat part kind of piques my interest, because hats haven't been around for the entire existence of humanity. So what was the visual experience before hats were, I guess, invented?
Now, I did also read. I did a lot of reading this week. I just want you to know.
That's good. Reading is very good.
So I did read that in some like ancient figures, I don't have specific names, don't come for me.
Sure.
But some
Kurt's
ancient.
gonna get you.
Yeah, I know. I can feel him through the.
No.
There were some ancient figures back in the day, call them gods, call
Sure.
them whatever,
Deities, yeah.
that were depicted in hat-like,
headpieces.
and I don't want to say there are stories, because nobody knows anybody from back then, so you're not going to read about stories.
Me and King Tut, we go way back, I'm telling you.
No, you're not going to read about stories from King Tut.
The hat thing could be chronologically driven. I mean, like the order of how hats progress. You know, people are seeing fedoras and top hats nowadays. Maybe like in 20 years they're going to see like wide brim hats, or like the hat I have on, or I call it
trucker hat.
Yeah, trucker hat with a twill. Them crazy people that wear those. And maybe they're going to see it differently as we progress, but it could also be a cultural thing. Like maybe in India they see more of the rap, or in different places they see a different thing. But and I also think it's interesting that the Hat Man is associated with more than just a sleeping time frame. So it's not necessarily always at night in the room while you're sleeping.
No.
People see him as shadow people.
100%.
So that's very interesting. Do you think, so about Men in Black, as far as of the Men in Black and ufology, where they come and knock on people's doors, and they're knocking on people's doors to intimidate them or what have you, and that's a whole topic, but they're described as being dressed in black, very classic slender people, with wide brim hats that are top hats or fedoras. But could Men in Black be part of that shadow? I mean, are Men in Black creeping into the bedroom while you're having these sleep paralysis fits? Men in Black have also been described to be aliens. So I don't know. It's all fascinating to me.
If the Men in Black are between 7 and 10 feet tall, because I haven't read a story where he was not described as extremely tall and like otherworldly tall.
So in majority of cases, he's very tall.
He's very tall.
So that's spooky.
Always has a trench coat. Always has a hat. You can never make out features. And most of these are sleep paralysis stories. However, like I said, you do find stories out there that are, I seen a man in a hat in the back of the hallway.
Yeah.
I seen, you know what I mean? So
Right. Curt, have you ever had a sleep paralysis experience?
No, I haven't.
oh wow.
Yeah, I
Oddly.
consider you lucky. It's kind of frightening. Yeah.
Well, and that actually brings up an interesting question. So, psychologically, you're in a state of sleep paralysis. Does that kick in your primal fight or flight mentality, which then would, whatever you're consciously seeing, but because your body isn't able to react, you've gone into a fight or flight, and that's why it seems like whatever you think you're perceiving down the hallway or whatever is sinister, is because this fight or flight has kicked in.
That makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I like that. And that's a great question. And so I guess that would, another question that can kind of branch off of that would be, why aren't people seeing like dinosaurs in the hall? Because I'd be scared shitless of a dinosaur.
100%.
Fight or
There's
flight.
so many things, you know, but
Suddenly there's a velociraptor
Yeah.
door knocking.
Yeah, for sure. Like Jeff
Yeah.
Goldblum is in the hallway and all that, but
stop.
Well, he is a slender man.
he is very slender.
This
Yeah.
is true.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So
I don't know. This is so intriguing to me because, and I didn't even tell you this, but last week, this is
breaking news.
this is what brought me onto this subject was, well, this is why I chose this subject, I guess I should say.
Sure.
My mom called me out of the blue last week. And it was more like a FaceTime.
She didn't want to borrow Kool-Aid, but she's gonna give you something spooky.
She said, Vanessa, you've got to hear this. And she flashed her phone, because like I said, we were on FaceTime, to two pretty credible sources, in my opinion, family members of mine.
Okay.
She's like, you've got to hear this. And it was woman about 30 something, mid 30s, 14-year-old daughter. 14-year-old daughter starts telling me about experiences that she's been having with sleep paralysis and a man in a hat sitting at the side of her bed.
Get out of here.
Every hair on my, just the way, like I said, nobody knows these people like I do. This is my family.
Okay.
So to me, personally, this is pretty credible coming from...
I probably know them, right?
Probably.
Okay.
This is pretty credible coming from this 14-year-old girl, this particular 14-year-old girl. She says she wakes up probably twice a week, and she is frozen in fear. She can't move. She can't scream. She can barely move her eyes, but her eyes are mobile enough
Classic
to where...
paralysis.
Yeah. So, but every single time there is a man, she always at first thinks it's a home invader. That's the sensation she gets. So I guess that's the fight or flight.
Yeah, like Curt's talking about.
That kind of kicks in, and at that moment, all she wants to do is yell for her mom. But she also describes feeling like she doesn't want this person or thing to know she's awake.
Okay. Does that sound familiar to you at all?
To me?
My tattoo.
Wow.
So
okay.
the first line of the book that I'm writing is, she did not breathe for fear it would know that she's alive.
Yeah.
So basically an experience that my mom had before she passed, and it's a whole other topic. It'd be episode 10 of the Shadow Things podcast. Just as sort of an intro, but my mom had an experience where the first thing that was on her mind is not to be detected by whatever it was that was in her room at the time.
She felt this child felt like it's better for this person to not know that I'm even
Sure.
conscious. right now.
That's crazy considering it's sitting in a chair.
It's sitting right there at the end of her bed.
Was it on Facebook or on the
Not at
Shadow
all.
Things Twitter? Oh, okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
And it stayed there, and she recalls, here's the kicker, coming out of her state of paralysis.
Wow.
Completely. Falling out of her bed in the hopes that when she turned around or turned her head to take a peek to see if the entity or person was still there,
Sure.
that it would be gone. She peeked out of the corner of her eye, and she said that the man was still sitting there.
Okay, so that's a problem.
That is a problem.
Right.
She was completely out of her state of sleep.
That is not very sleep paralysis oriented when it comes to that presence, because normally the sleep paralysis experiencer does not see the presence.
Right.
Now she fell out of the bed and saw, for better terms, Hat Man sitting next to her bed.
Uh-huh.
What happened next?
She took a minute and tried to collect herself.
Right.
She tried to get her way back into the bed without looking at this thing. She got into the bed.
Is there a door that she can, like, because I'm fucking gone.
This thing is between her and the door.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this thing is between her and the door.
Window.
Yeah, the window.
The window is actually, if I can recall, right beside her bed. But
Okay. So
listen,
she gets back in bed.
She does get back in bed.
Mm-hmm.
And she, the way she described it was, she knows that she did fall back asleep, but when at some point, moments later after getting in the bed, she opened her eyes back up, and it was gone.
Interesting.
So I'm not really sure what to make of that whole story, but that's not something that I feel like this particular person would make up.
Yeah. Now, did this particular person describe the actual hat?
The hat?
Yeah.
She said it was the trench coat man
Get out of here.
in a wide brim hat,
Wow.
and he did not go away when she came out of her state of paralysis.
That is super interesting.
For a moment, he was still there.
Yeah.
She got back in bed, peeked again, and he was gone.
Yeah. Now I've heard tales or recounts of people that would see an apparition or what have you within their proximity and try to blink or maybe put the cover over their head.
Count to 10.
And then they look an instant later and it's still there. So I've heard of that before, but I've never heard of the Hat Man, being a part of that. It sounds to me like that was a shadow person. I don't know. Maybe it's all the same.
I don't disagree.
Like Kurt's saying, maybe it's all one phenomenon. Mm-hmm. But but it's interesting that she had the sleep paralysis effect. Maybe that is an actual entity that affects that upon the sleeper. Maybe that's part of the theory, and that's part of the theory with the alien visitations. A lot of people in ufology believe that aliens have the ability to paralyze us and do what they got to do and float us up into the mothership or whatever. And that's all part of the deal. So very, very interesting. I got to learn more about that off air.
I wish that these two I could bring in here just to let you, if you heard the way that they described these encounters, because it's not the only one she's had.
Oh, goodness.
The brother, a couple years older, has seen this thing in broad daylight.
Right. And any other paranormal characteristics or signatures going on in the home that kind of lean towards this place just being plain old haunted?
Noises, doors shutting, that does happen.
Sure.
Voices, unexplainable. There's a photo, not of the Hat Man, that was caught in the home that I would love to share sometime because you
was that
can't
captured
explain
at a
it.
birthday party by
It
chance?
sure was.
Okay,
So
so I've
you
seen.
know.
You want to know a synchronicity that just hit me in the face?
What?
I looked at that this morning. That very photo.
Stop it.
Yes.
I have not looked at that photo
The
in
striped
years.
boy, right? The striped
There's a
shirt
boy. This is a birthday party, and this is the other daughter.
Okay.
And there was not a boy in a striped
Sure.
shirt.
Yeah. I spent some time analyzing that photo for them, but yeah, very, very interesting. It's so fascinating that the Hat Man is kind of a new term, but I guess a big question for me would during the Hat Man experiences that people have, does he interact at all? So during this particular story that you're sharing, really no interaction, but when classic cases of sleep paralysis, you get what's called the Old Hag syndrome, where people experience and see an old hag or an older woman that jumps on their chest and suppresses their breathing and sometimes chokes them. Does Hat Man have any? Is he just more of a visual?
Just a creeper in the corner.
Creeper? No, there are creepers in the corner.
Just a creeper in the corner.
I'd rather have one outside the window with a flashlight and a pair of goggles and maybe some flippers on or something, at 3 a.m. than the Hat Man.
I'm here to tell you I couldn't agree more. Now, I got to add quickly that I have also read that this guy...
I don't know where I was going with that.
This guy comes at the cusp of adulthood for children.
Okay.
And they pretty much have reoccurring issues with this entity throughout several years of their life into their adulthood, and then it just kind of stops. Whether that be in their dreams or in a sleep paralysis state or in broad daylight, they can see him walk around the corner, out of the corner of their eye. All kinds of different scenarios.
Wow.
I have read where there has been death come from situations.
From the apparition appearance of a shadow person?
In children who have... Now, I'm not going to say this is all factual because I don't know how credible it is, but I've read that there have been deaths in children with heart defects. I mean, I kind of got to throw my hands up at that part because like I said, I don't know. But in children with some kind of heart defect or some sort of health problem, their hearts can't handle the experience.
Right. I can relate to that, actually. I'm scared shitless sometimes.
They simply can't handle the experience.
Right.
And it's caused death.
Okay.
So to speak.
That is, wow.
Intense.
Yeah, that's pretty intense. That's that frightening, basically.
It's apparently really frightening. So,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to make of it, I guess.
Curt, have you ever seen a shadow person?
I don't know. It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen anything I would consider a shadow person. I mean, I've seen apparitions. It's been a long time.
Sure.
But not anything I would describe as a man in a hat or a very tall, slender, shadowy figure at all. So
yeah,
no, I would say I probably haven't. But then again, I also have never experienced the sleep paralysis thing.
Yeah, to each your own. I mean, there's different times and conditions for people to experience things, independently. So I guess a lot of people. I think everybody and whether you believe it or not, everybody experiences seeing a shadow from time to time. And a lot of the skeptics or people that are not interested in this podcast would just simply brush it off as a fucking shadow,
Right.
But to me, I'm like, I want to know what created it. And some people take it a step further and associate it with it being a ghost. And they take it a step further sometimes and associate it with it being a person or a past person, because it's black or shadowy or dark or a black mass. They associate it with badness or evil. So you think the Hat Man and the Old Hag and, the general shadow person experience for people, do you think that Vanessa is usually on the bad spectrum for people? Do you think they tie the shadowy type experiences in because it's the color black or dark?
I would almost say that has to be an element to it. Like, of course.
Yeah, I don't think God's going to come into your room or some angel, the archangel, black. I don't think. Not. I don't know, but
I would hope not.
Yeah, maybe Curt can help us with that.
I don't know. I think that whether it was benevolent or malevolent, and you were in a state of sleep paralysis and opened your eyes and it was there, it would bug you no matter if it was a good thing or a bad thing.
It's an intruder. Yeah.
Right.
That fight or flight.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we honestly, our bedrooms are a sacred place to us. It's where we lay down and make ourselves most vulnerable.
Right.
So anytime there's an intruder in that space, regardless of who or what the intruder is, it's going to be earth shaking. And
yeah, that's it.
No
That's
matter what color they are. I mean, it could be a red glow. It wouldn't.
You're 100% right.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I just think generally people associate darkness with the, black or the fear of not really knowing what it is, I guess. But
yeah.
Guys in a black hat in a cowboy movie.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, the good guy wears white or whatever, brown, but the bad guy is always wearing black.
100%.
Yeah, fistful of dollars and all them good Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns. They all got black on.
Definitely.
Darth Vader.
Yeah, Darth Vader.
Unrelated. It's related, but fun fact. Did you know? No, you didn't.
Shit.
That this whole thing was partially the inspiration for the film A Nightmare on Elm Street. If you know anything about Freddy Krueger.
I know he's pretty scary.
He's pretty awful. I can't sit through a Freddy Krueger movie personally, but
he has a striped sweater.
He has a striped sweater.
He does. It's
a Christmas sweater.
It's
and he has a fedora.
Christmas sweater.
Yeah.
But he comes in your dreams, in your sleep, in your in your micro naps, in your lucid dreams.
Yeah, he does have a hat.
And he kills you. So I
would associate him or label him more as the glove man, though. Maybe that's a new thing we can start.
The awful man, in my opinion. But
I did not know that. So there was a basis around that.
Yes, so that was part of it. I know there was I'm pretty sure there was an actual guy named Fred Krueger or something like that.
Shit, I don't know. I thought it was all made up, but...
No, I'm pretty sure there's some truth to that story. Not that there's a man with scissors on his, or knives on his, not Edward Scissorhands, but knives. He's got knives, not scissors.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that he didn't have all of that good stuff, but...
Sure.
I think it was based around a real guy.
Yeah.
Who worked at an elementary or something. He was kind of...
That's pretty cool.
Creepy.
In elementary school, we all dreamed up the whole... I guess it was fact to us that Freddy Krueger was haunting our boiler room in elementary school.
Tight.
And we would see him out in the playground and all this stuff and try to get off of school early because we didn't want to get, clawed up and shit.
That sounds like something I would have done.
Yeah.
Were you sleeping in class?
That is a distinct possibility, Curt.
Oh, no.
Very distinct possibility.
I mean, Freddy can only get you if you're sleeping.
That's true. Yeah. Mr. McLeod in third grade was very boring, so... I probably was asleep.
I bet you were lucid dreaming.
Yeah, we really, as kids, believed in Freddy, that he was at school.
Yeah.
But I did not know it was tied to kind of sleeping, and of course that's part of the story, but sleep paralysis and the fact that some boogeyman, for better terms, comes and gets people. But the shadow man doesn't get people. He just kind of creeps.
Yeah,
I'd rather for you to get me. If you're going to be in my bedroom, that sacred place...
You better have a damn purpose, first of all.
You just do it up, man.
And you better hope that you kill me, because I'm coming for you.
Right. And interestingly that you said that, when I have these paralysis, and it's been many years, but when I would have them, my instinct was not really to fear it. Over time, I wanted to get at it. I was pissed off because it was in my proximity.
I've experienced
Curt said, that is my sacred place. Besides the bathroom, that's sacred too. Don't ever come into the bathroom with me because that's my stuff in there.
That's the porcelain throne.
But when you're in your bedroom, you just don't want anybody else in there,
no.
Right? So I got angry over time, and I don't mean for the listeners and the YouTube viewers. I don't mean to poke fun at the whole topic.
Right.
But I mean, you got to have some fun. But some people genuinely have problems or issues or mental health issues that relate to these experiences, and whether or not it's an entity-based issue or a mental health-based issue or just part of our natural being, part of being a human, people do experience it. And I hope that people that do experience it find some peace and solace, and maybe listen to us and maybe even find a little bit of humor. But in the future, I hope to take some guest callers maybe and bring some people on that's had some some very deep experiences relating to sleep paralysis or the Hat Man.
The Hat Man.
Yeah. So real quick,
another great human reaction is to make fun of things that actually cause you anxiety.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
It's a coping mechanism.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I don't make fun of sharks. That's my greatest
There's nothing
fear.
funny about sharks.
Nothing funny. They're Satan in the water. I'm telling you.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
Well, it's true, but
it's a large eating machine.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
Just eats. Like,
stop it. They're cute.
When I want a number 2 combo at the McDonald's, it's like, get the fuck out of my way. I'm going to eat it. And that's what sharks do.
Yep.
But anyhow, that's not paranormal topic related, but yeah. So one more thing about the Hat Man is, so we all know about Slender Man. We had this whole Slender Man boom over the past 5 years. We've had movies come out and stuff like that. And so it's became a topic in mainstream. Now, Slender Man wears a hat, correct? Or is he just the bald guy?
In some depictions of the Slender Man, I have seen him in a hat.
Yeah.
Not often.
So he's like the old guy in Phantasm. You remember that movie?
Curt, another synchronicity. I just watched Phantasm 1 and 2 last week.
You guys are giving me the creeps.
Boy. Fantastic, scary movie.
When I think of the Slender Man thing, that's what I always picture.
Yeah.
Is the guy from Phantasm.
Right. Do you like how he picked up that coffin when nobody was looking and just winged it in the back of that hearse?
No.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very slender, but kind of the same type of attire and everything, all black. But
typically, Slender Man is depicted as a white face, no face. I'm sorry, he does not ever have a face. In a black suit.
Have you seen Sir No Face?
No.
Okay, we'll talk about that later on, but that's, just kind of reminded me of that. But yeah, Slender Man's been a whole thing, but more associated with outdoors.
Typically
context.
In the woods.
But all kind of centered around a story that happened in real life about 3 girls, I think, that were involved in a criminal case where one of the girls actually was
murdered.
Was she murdered?
Two of the girls murdered her. Yep.
Yeah, very tragic story that was really based entirely around their belief in Slender Man, or at least one girl's belief in Slender Man. Yep. But I'm not an expert on that story, but it's another shadowy figure with a hat, so maybe hats are a thing. People see entities and apparitions that don't have hats, but I think the whole hat lends some eeriness to that experience.
I guess so. Maybe there's just some sort of association with a discomfort, like you're in a state of sleep or you're minding your business and you see somebody and they have a hat and it's uncomfortable. I don't know. I don't even know where I'm going with that, but you get it.
Culturally, you don't wear hats inside normally. So
yes, you'd only be
this guy sitting by your bed. He's got a hat on.
Right?
Why's he got a hat on?
I didn't even think about that.
Is
either.
he going somewhere? Is he taking me somewhere?
Oh, Curt, stop it!
I'm not sleeping tonight at all.
Curt, you're never coming on the show again. That's a great point. Like, why do you have a hat on? Like, who wears
a coat?
Who wears a hat? Who wears a hat inside, like me, that I'm doing right now?
A trench coat.
Trench coat. That's actually pretty creepy.
See, I'm not thinking about any of these things until now. So
yeah, Jeepers Creepers had a trench coat as well. Yeah, thanks, Curt. But seriously, it is a real phenomenon that people, some people might be listening to this podcast or watching us on YouTube just because they're experiencers are interested in the Hat Man or the the sleep paralysis phenomenon as a whole, because I think by far and away people experience these things than they do, seeing the typical Scooby-Doo classic haunting type stuff going on in their homes. So I think it may be taboo for people to talk about too. You don't really go to the breakfast table and say, "Hey, Mom, I get scared shitless last night. I couldn't move. There was something in the doorway."
Right.
So but people, it's a real phenomenon. Just like, I don't take anything away from Bigfoot experiencers or UFO experiencers, ghost experiencers. It's a real phenomenon. People are having things happening at night or in the woods and seeing something, a person, a figure, a human form with a hat on or without a hat on. It's very spooky. It's a real situation for some people, and an excellent topic here on the Shadow Things podcast. So we're going to wrap up. We're going to talk next week about the state of, all things demonology related. So we're talking angels and demons next not next week, but the next podcast. So episode 3. But for now, I want to thank Curt Ehas, my good friend, for coming on today and talking about the topics that he's delivered to us so nicely. It's always great to talk to you, Curt, and I hope you will come back for another future episode.
Oh, I definitely will.
Well, thank you, sir, and you have a good one, and we will talk to you later.
And that's it for this week's show. Thanks for stopping by and sitting around the campfire with us or hanging out in the creepy attic, listening to this now in the books episode of the Shadow Things podcast. And just remember, on behalf of myself and my co-host, stay in the light and out of the shadows.